Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week I'm going to go back over some of those issues I had last week and see if I can sort the mess out. Alright, so as you saw last week, I spent the whole day pulling my hair out trying to tackle a whole bunch of different problems. And one of the main things I really love about YouTube is I got on there, I showed you my problems, and a bunch of you came back with heaps of great suggestions on how to sort through my issues and see if I can actually get this thing running properly. So the first thing I wanted to tackle today is the issues I was having with my fuel pressure regulator. As you saw, I couldn't get it to work properly, and I think one of the main reasons why I wasn't getting it to work properly is I didn't actually have the car running when I'm trying to check the fuel pressure. And what I'm going to do today to make sure everything sort of gets going properly, I'm going to reinstall the fuel pressure regulator, turned up to maximum, and I'm going to pour some fuel directly into the car, make sure I can actually get it running and actually see if I can get some fuel pressure going. So it's another version. Let's see if I can actually get it to work this time. Yeah, let's give it a go. All right, there was a little bit of messing around there trying to set it up and a couple of leaks. I've fixed that up. I think I've actually flooded it. I jumped the gun and put a bit much fuel in it. So I'm going to leave it for a little bit and let's go back over and have a look at that fuel gauge. Okay, so as you guys may have seen last week, I was having issues with my fuel gauge. Basically what was happening is when the tank was full, it was reading up just below half a tank, and then it would go down at the correct rate. So basically by the time it was at about half a tank, it was down to showing in the reserve, and I thought it could be just a matter of adjusting the arms on the sender inside the tank, and that didn't help. It wasn't the issue. So what I'm going to do now is a few people gave me some suggestions on how to check and see whether it's the gauge or whether it's the sender by sending power to either one and just checking what the messages are coming from them and see if I can sort it out. So I'm going to get under the bonnet now, pull some of these bits out and do a couple of tests and see how we go. All right, I've pulled the gauge out here and I've done a bit of investigating, and electrical work, I must say, is my Achilles heel. It's something that I want to learn more about, but I'm definitely a long way from being an expert on anything electrical. From what I gather, basically, and from what some guys explained to me, the way the gauge works is it's like I showed you last week. There's the bimetal strip in there, and when it gets a full 12 volts, it bends all the way over and shows you a full tank. Now you can see the gauge is currently reading just below half a tank, which is where I bent the gauge to last time. And if I hit this terminal, my little power scanner, if I send ground to this side, you can see that the gauge goes up off the charts. So I know that the gauge is actually working, functioning, and it sent a lot of power to it straight away. You don't want to do it too much because it can wreck the gauge, but it will cool down and it'll come back down. I need to go back in and see if I can undo the little bending that I did last week and get it to work. There we go. Gauge has come back. Pull it apart, fix what I did last week and put it back to normal and do some more investigating. Okay, I've managed to get this gauge to sit back down where it should, on empty. So now it's the time to put it back in the car. Okay, I've got my fuel gauge out and I've got my power scanner here, and I've got it set up on resistance. So what I'm going to try is basically the way it's supposed to read is this gets constant negative grounding on one side, and depending on where this gauge sits as to how much it lets that through to the gauge itself. So it needs to have a resistance of about 73 ohms at full droop and about 10 ohms at full. So I'm going to go through now, check them both and see where we sit. So I'll just connect up one side to this and around 70 ohms at the bottom and around 10 ohms at the top. So that's telling me that the gauge, the sender, is working correctly. All right, so there's the moment of truth. We're sitting back in the car and as you can see, the gauge is reading about where I'd want it to read when the car is off and when the tank is completely empty. And we've currently got about half to a quarter of a tank, I'm guessing, probably about a quarter of a tank in there. So let's see. Hey, turn the key on and we have movement. And I'm not sure exactly where it's sitting. I didn't actually pay super close attention, but what I'm going to do is I'll have to go out and fill it up later today and see if we're any better, see if it's good. But at least before I started playing around with it at all, the gauge would be reading right down at 0 when I was doing this sort of test. So we'll just see, and it'll play it by ear. What I may have done is I'm thinking it could have been the ground to the vibrator that sits on the back. May not have actually been a clean enough ground and it wasn't getting clean power through, or maybe my connections weren't good. But either way, we'll just see how it goes. Let's move back to see if we can start this car. Hey, we have it running. We have it running. And we're running way too much fuel pressure, so let's just lower this down. That was a pig to get it to start, but now I've finally got it running and I've managed to drop the fuel pressure down. So now it is actually running at just between 2.5 and 3 psi, about 2 3/4 psi. I've set it right in the middle. So I'm going to lock that down now, and we have liftoff. Finally! Yes! Fingers crossed it's not going to strand me anymore. Let's see how it goes on the road. That's not a good start. Are we having warm start issues? Let's just check the battery. Still having these warm start issues. Okay, so now it's running, it runs fine, but that warm start issue is something I continue to have, and it's driving me crazy. I can't drive the car anywhere because it's not reliable enough. I've got the jumper pack in the car all the time, and it keeps having these issues. So now I've fixed up the overheating issue in the engine bay because I've blocked up all the holes. So some of your suggestions were that. Other suggestions, fuel pressure. Now I fixed the fuel pressure. That's no longer the problem, but I'm still having this issue. I'm running out of ideas, guys, so whatever you can give me would really help. This is the last thing anybody wants. Is it's no good having a classic car if you just can't rely on it, and I've got to be able to start it regularly. In any case, I think it's time to move on to the next job. All right, frustrating warm start issues aside, the next thing I want to tackle is this really sloppy gear shift. And I've actually gone and got myself a brand new bushing to put in here, so it's time to pull these seats out and see if we can fix this gear stick up.
Make sure you place the plate the right way round with the tongues facing up and the larger tongue towards the right hand side of the car.
All right, so it took a little bit of playing around to get it in the right spot, basically loosening up those two bolts and then moving the gear stick around, tightening it down, feel how it feels, and just keep adjusting it until you can get all the gears nicely and cleanly. And now it's so much tighter than it was. Before we go too much further, I've got these old seat belts in the car. They are, almost tipped the camera over. They are pretty ratty and terrible, and I went out and I bought myself some replacement Beetle ones. They're a slightly different style, but they should be much better, much safer than these old frayed, terrible things. So I'm going to bolt these now and swap over the seat belts. Then I'll put the seats in and go for a trip. Okay, it's had a couple of hours to cool down now. Let's try it again. Let's see if we'll start and go and get some fuel and just see how our progress today has worked. Starts right up. So frustrating. All right, let's see if it starts. Oh, it started. And the fuel gauge has gone up to half. Oh, that's not it. We'll just have to keep going and see if we can work out what's going wrong with it. gearbox feels so much better. It's great. At the moment it seems though to be running nicely, but take it for a bit of a drive, get it warm, and then see what it's like when we get home. See if it'll restart when it's hot. That's going to be the test. Alright, so I've just got back from my trip. It's driving beautifully, it's idling nicely, it's all running great. Now let's try turning it off and see if it'll restart. Let's see. Alright, well that seems to start okay right now. I don't know what it is. I'll keep driving it and see if it keeps giving me trouble, but for now it's back, it's running. The fuel gauge moved up to just over half a tank, so pretty much where it was before. So I'm not sure what the issue is. It basically seems to be working again, sort of, so at least for now I'm just going to leave it alone, and I may just have to live with it. So I've got a little bit of time left before Mrs. Jeff gets home from work, so I suppose I should start going around and doing a little bit more of the paint touch-ups, and I'm going to start with some of these runs here on the glove box. So let's start chopping out runs. That was a much more successful week than last week. Still not perfect. That warm start issue is really driving me crazy. But in any case, I am well and truly out of time. So that must mean it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys. 1969 saw Volkswagen finally offering a fully automatic Beetle to the Australian market. Volkswagen also entered a 1600 Type 3 in the Bathurst 500 that year. It managed to finish the race, but it was totally outmatched by the Datsun 1600s, which managed to win the first 5 places in their class. That was the final year an air-cooled Volkswagen raced at Bathurst. The Disney film The Love Bug debuts in 1969 just in time for Christmas, and a drive-in in Sydney was filled with 400 Volkswagens, completely filling the field. Due to Volkswagen Australia reverting back to assembling the complete knockdown kits in Germany, the company finally made a profit of $259,000 for the year.
Well, John Lemon is looking good. It's coming together, but that warm start issue is driving me crazy. So if any of you have some good suggestions, let me know. I'm willing to try whatever. I don't know what's going on. It's just driving me nuts.
We'll get there in the end.
Yes, well, I'll keep working
it's a slow journey, but we'll get there.
In any case, that's it for this week.
Like and subscribe if you're enjoying the show, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Like and subscribe. I've said that. Sorry, I've got a cold. I've got man flu.
Mrs. Jess is not doing great in this weather. And spring is apparently here, but you haven't
really
noticed
cold.
It today.
It's really cold.
All right, guys. See you next time.
Outmatched by the Datsun 6. One little mistake. One. Six. Let me do that again. Who's just in time. Reverting back to a 16 makes sense. He made a profit for the year. Oh, no. That's very hard to read. It's all scribbled out.